Good morning. I'm Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, delighted to be here, helping to lead worship this morning. Welcome into this sacred space and our time together. We will begin with music for centering, the music God Bless the Child by Billie Holiday and Arthur Herzog, performed by Rip Jackson.
Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible said, and it still is news. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. Yes, the strong gets more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Money, you've got lots of friends crowded round the door. When you're gone and spending it, they don't come no more. Rich relations give crust of bread and such. You can't help yourself, but don't take too much. Mama may have, but Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Woo! Woo!
Welcome. Welcome one and all. Welcome to our first mask optional worship service this year at First Parish. If you are here in the sanctuary today and new to our church or have been coming to worship virtually, our Members and Friends Committee is inviting you to join them for a newcomer meet and greet in the parlor, which is right through here, immediately after the worship service. You will have a chance to chat with other people who are also new to First Parish and ask questions of some of our members. We do have a few announcements. I want to remind everyone that we have an excellent email list with weekly announcements, which really has an abundant source of information. So if you're not on that list, talk to the administrator. I want to remind everyone of our adult programs every Tuesday. We will have another adult program this Tuesday at 4:30. Our next widening our circle workshop, which we have been doing all year long. Our fifth one is on April 3rd, on Zoom and in person, so please mark your calendars for that. And then finally, I do want to highlight that in widening our circle outward, you may consider looking at a Zoom program sponsored by New Hampshire. It's a two-part program, March 31st and April 14th. Again, these are the types of things you can find in that weekly reminder. And now we have a special announcement from our board member, Debbie Armstrong.
Well, I have really been looking forward to this moment. And by the way, I'm not wearing just the board hat, I'm wearing two other hats right now. One, mom, and two, a very excited member of this congregation. Now, I'm not talking about mom, meaning myself as a mom. I'm talking about mom, M-O-M, Minister of Music. As a member of the board, I am really pleased to announce that in anticipation of a vote by the congregation in May, the board, in consultation with Reverend Ann before she went on sabbatical, developed or created a task force and appointed this task force to work with Rip Jackson for defining what it would mean for First Parish to ordain Rip as the minister of music. Members of the task force include Lee Jeffers-Brahmy, Reggie O'Hare-Gibson, Vicki Guo, Deb Weiner-Soul, our convener, and myself. That's why I'm wearing the mom hat as well as the board hat. So tomorrow you will receive an email with lots of important information about this proposal, including an invitation to include an online meeting at 1:30 next Sunday, March 27th, and Rip will be present. He will present his vision for music ministry, and by the way, he will not attend other meetings that we will hold. You will have a number of opportunities, however, to learn about the proposal, ask questions, make comments, and have members of the MOM task force respond. So we really hope you'll join us, get involved, and engaged in this important conversation about what it will mean for First Parish to have Rip ordained as our minister of music. Thank you.
Our chalice lighting this morning is written by Reverend Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you, that everything is okay right now. So that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now, our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love. And now, won't you please join me in saying our unison affirmation? Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. So just a second. I am going to mention that we are going to sing an introit, and that is Dream a World by Andra Thomas, sung by the Sanctuary Choir.
Such
This morning surprises us, despite 10,000 mornings of sunrise and bird song. In the deepest crease of night, the war weighed heavy, and family worries and health worries, and the last bitter words we spoke. And like a choir, somewhere from nowhere, in the thin sliver of sunrise comes the music of now. Everything winging, alive, the birds fearless in the midst of all that is uncertain. The warmth like God's exhale stirs the grass, and the ants come focused and busy. This is the gift, waking again, to the hope that life itself assures. Gathered at the edge of a new day full of possibility to try again, to give again, to work again alongside each other, to strive together to build the world that we seek. Come, let us gather at the center of now, at the edge of a new day, brimming with hope. Let us worship together. I invite you to join in singing our opening hymn, Come Thou Fount, number 126.
Perfection, fill
Brahmi, a member of our racial justice team and a representative to the UU Urban Ministry, to give our moment of mission this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm happy to be here with you and with Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, Executive Director of the UU Urban Ministry. Our church has been associated with the Urban Ministry based at the First Parish Church, Roxbury, for the last 30 years. We currently have 3 delegates to the Urban Ministry: Connie Counts, Teresa Jacobson, and myself. Jane Beswick is also part of our Urban Ministry group. Several other church members have also volunteered over the years to make or buy holiday gifts and baked goods that are specifically suggested by the families at Renewal House, a facility and program run by the Urban Ministry. Some church volunteers have served on the board. Some have helped with food distribution for those who need it. Other urban ministry programs we support include co-sponsoring some of the community conversations, fascinating interactive Zoom talks featuring local Roxbury activists, historians, and artists, among others. We invite you to volunteer for one or more of the many key programs of the Urban Ministry. Volunteering for the Roxbury youth programs as tutor or workshop leader, as a facilitator for the Believe in Success program, or to serve on the Believe in Success Scholarship Committee. Besides these volunteer opportunities, there are also very enjoyable cultural events at First Parish Church, Roxbury, like the summer jazz concerts on the church's beautiful outdoor campus and the Handel and Haydn Society concert in the fall. The Urban Ministry depends on the generosity of its 46 affiliated UU churches in the greater Boston area, including First Parish Lexington, to keep all of these programs going for the local Roxbury community. So please be as generous as you can during the offering. And just a little announcement, there will be a follow-up after the service with Reverend Mary Margaret Earl in our common room for everyone who wants to talk with her about the Urban Ministry or simply to pick up some literature about it. Thank you.
So now is the time of our offertory. And each of us does offer a unique portfolio of gifts to sustain and enrich our interconnected community of which we are a part. But let us deepen this time of our worship by offering financial gifts that acknowledges our commitment to the ministry of the Urban Ministry, and that sustains also those interfaith connections. Our offertory this morning is Rise Up by Andra and sung by Rosie MacClary. Those of you online, as always, can use the QR code that you can see on the slide to make your offering. Thank you.
When you're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we're gonna walk it out and move mountains. We're gonna walk it out and move mountains.
truly blessed with wonderful music. Thank you. Our reading this morning is a responsive reading. So I invite you to read what you see on the slide after I begin. It is by Marge Piercy, and it's called Connections Are Made Slowly. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground.
You cannot always tell by looking at what is happening.
More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet.
Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet.
Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree.
Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden.
Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar.
Weave real connections, create real nodes, build real houses.
Live a life you can endure. Make life that is loving.
Keep tangling and interweaving and topping more in. A thicket and bramble, wilderness to the outside, but to us it is interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs.
Live as if you like yourself, and it may happen.
Reach out, keep reaching out, keep bringing in.
This is how we are going to live for a long time, not always.
For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes.
It is good to be back in the sanctuary, the first time in quite a while, preaching in 3 dimensions, and it is good to see your faces and to be here. Thanks so much to Rip Jackson and Elisabeth and the worship team for facilitating my visit here and for so carefully planning and welcoming me. And thanks to our urban ministry delegates, Connie Counts, Teresa Jacobson, and Lee Brammy for helping to plan this visit. There are so many ways that First Parish in Lexington has been part of the urban ministry work, and you heard Lee mention a number of those. It's good to be here to say thank you. First Parish Lexington, as Lee said, was one of the earliest community conversations webinar sponsors in January of 2021, and you co-sponsored our most recent webinar on our vision and mission. Among you are longtime champions and supporters like Helen and Don Cohen, Teresa Jacobson, John and Agnes Howe, the Mulready Schicks, Marty and Bob Quall, and new friends like Omar and Ann Kadari. Reverend Stephen Schick right now is volunteering with the staff of the Urban Ministry, leading workshops on public speaking with his From the Heart work, and he's been enthusiastically welcomed, so we thank him. And I especially want to lift up a special word of gratitude for our longtime supporter, Connie Counts, who, with her husband, Lou, had a lot to do with that 30-year history that you hear about. Connie was on our board for many years, and she and Lou were champions of racial justice and the work of the urban ministry throughout. And Connie and Lou gave a founding gift to begin the work on our beautiful Peace Garden that overlooks the Boston skyline and is a place for neighbors and program participants to come. And we're going to have a ribbon cutting in May, and I hope you all come and witness that special space. So it is good to be here and look out at folks who've been part of our work and share our gratitude, and also to be able to share more with you about the work ahead. And I'm going to begin with a story, and it's a hard story. So it's a story of the exact moment that I knew I had been shaped by racism. I was 18 years old, playing soccer in gym class my first semester in college, and I tore down the field with drive and purpose, and I kicked the ball hard toward the goal and right into the shins of an opposing player. and my fierceness turned in a flash into fear. Not because I had hit the shins of a fellow player, that was common, but because my opponent, also a college student, was black. And I feared her reaction. I skidded to a stop, apologized profusely, my fierceness evaporating into thin air, and she, who I didn't know, she, the most soft-spoken of young women, said, "Oh, it's fine, don't worry, it's fine." And it was that split second of fear colliding with gentleness, the upending of my reaction by her soft kindness that jogged loose what I hadn't seen in myself and was forced to see. My reaction was racist. I feared her and her reaction to my drive to the shins because she was black. I'd been shaped by racism, and I didn't know how that had happened. I grew up in an overwhelmingly white farming town in upstate New York. My sports teams were all white, my 4-H club, my friends, my neighbors. I didn't see black people, and I thought racism had been settled in the 60s. So how had it happened? This fear. The gift of this confusing moment was that I glimpsed that I had absorbed racism without knowing it. We are shaped by stories and untruths that are rendered invisible and by a history that has been covered over. Our biases form through a million images in the movies and TV, like the gradual building of a drip sandcastle, one small handful of sand at a time. These shape our inner landscape. Our outer landscape has been shaped by racism too, by policies that are paired with bias, courts and schools, where we live and who does not live there. Despite all of it, for white people, it's easy not to see it and to ignore it. And so the question is, what is asked of us then as people of faith? How do we bring into focus something that is so easily blurred over? In 2021, the UU Urban Ministry embraced a new mission statement, which calls us to work across race and place to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. It's a call that inspires, but it's also daunting. How do we do that? So, for those of you who are less familiar to us, the Urban Ministry is a 190-year-old organization now based in Roxbury, at the historic heart of Boston's Black community. We are grounded in our UU faith values and encircled by UU member congregations like this one. We've done many things through our history. Today, we provide programs for trauma survivors, after-school programming for Boston high school students, and cultural engagement in the Roxbury neighborhood we serve. We embark now on a mission that will call us to do more, to directly confront the racism that means that the average Roxbury resident lives 30 years less than a resident of White Back Bay just 1 mile away. That means that black college students leave before graduation at much higher rates than their white counterparts, the legacy that means that the household wealth of white Bostonians exponentially outstrips that of black Bostonians. Our new mission statement will call for new strategies and programs to confront this legacy, and it will take a deeper commitment by our member congregations. So I'm here asking for your help. Because it will take all of us, and also all of us, our heads, our hands, and our hearts, to do this work. Our heads help us learn the history of race in the United States. The African-American author James Baldwin said, "History, as nearly no one seems to know, is not merely something to be read, and it does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us. are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and history is literally present in all that we do, he said. We are called to learn that history. The African-American attorney and activist Bryan Stevenson, graduate of Harvard, tells the story of sitting in a courtroom as a defense attorney, and he said, "The judge and the prosecutor entered through a door at the back of the courtroom, laughing and chatting. When the judge saw me sitting at the defense table, he said to me harshly, 'Hey, you shouldn't be in here without counsel. Go back outside and wait in the hallway until your lawyer arrives.' I stood up and smiled broadly, and I said, 'Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. We haven't met. My name is Bryan Stevenson. I'm the lawyer on the case set for hearing this morning.' The judge laughed at his mistake, and the prosecutor joined in. I forced myself to laugh too because I didn't want my young client, a white child who'd been prosecuted as an adult, to be disadvantaged. He said, but I was disheartened by the experience. Of course, innocent mistakes occur, but constantly being underestimated, suspected, accused, watched, doubted, distrusted, presumed guilty, and even feared is a burden borne by people of color that can't be understood or confronted without a deeper conversation about our history of racial injustice," he said. The prison system, the wealth gap, the health gap, the reaction that I had to my classmate on the soccer field can only be understood by examining our history, by becoming conscious of the legacy that we've inherited, which began with the arrival of the first kidnapped Africans on these shores, by reading articles like the New York Times 1619 Project or books like The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. We need our heads for this work. But anyone frustrated by endless book clubs about white fragility knows that we also need to work for change. We need action, and there are abundant ways. At the Urban Ministry, we address the racial wealth gap by highlighting Black-owned businesses in Roxbury. We make commercials about them and feature them on our webinars and encourage our UU congregations to support them. We launched the Roxbury Artist Amplification Project, showcasing artists of color through virtual galleries. We created a catalog of their work, encouraging UUs to purchase from it, and I know that you have one hanging in your parish hall. We connect UUs from member congregations with partner organizations fighting for racial justice, those resisting displacement caused by gentrification, working for environmental justice, and for educational equity. We need our hands. We need action. But even this isn't enough. We also need our hearts to be in this. We need relationships across difference because relationships are the catalyst for real change. An awakened heart stays the course. Nearly 2 years ago, police killed an unarmed African-American man named George Floyd, and it was a death that reignited the Black Lives Matter movement across the world. UU congregations like this one gathered in the midst of the harshest of the COVID shutdown to march and demand change. The flames of that movement continue to burn for justice, but we need to ensure that they do not dim. And it's relationships, our hearts, that ensure that. Love makes us steadfast. Love holds us accountable. Love gives us the courage to do hard things. The African-American minister and historian, the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed, in one of his sermons, tells how the white clergy came to join Martin Luther King in Selma more than 50 years ago. UUs like the Reverend James Reeb, Orloff Miller, Clark Olson, and Jack Kent. These individuals, Morrison Reed writes, came to Selma not because of what they knew about segregation. It was because of the relationships they had. Reverend James Reeb, who was killed by white supremacists during his visit, lived in Dorchester, where his children attended black public schools and where he was immersed in the grassroots empowerment of his African American neighbors. He knew black people. Morrison Reed writes, "Today we assume that the outpouring of support and the rush to Selma was because of the righteousness of the cause and the magnitude of the injustice, but that doesn't fully explain the response," he wrote. Of course, it was because of the cause, but it was relationships that compelled them to go, the connection of one person to another. And here is our problem. Few places are harder to make a connection across race than Greater Boston. According to the Boston Magazine article, "How has Boston gotten away with being so segregated so long?" Of 51 metro areas with significant African American populations, we are the 15th most segregated. 2/3 of Boston's black population lives in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, and hardly any black people live in the suburbs, and that is by design. The article spells out in excruciating detail all the systems that for the past 100 years have ensured home ownership and therefore wealth creation was kept out of the hands of black people, and how these systems created a chasm between white people and black people and prevented us from knowing one another even into 2022. Segregation may not be the law of the land, but look around and we know it's a fact of Greater Boston. Over the past century, covenant restrictions and subdivisions and redlining and racist FHA policies and racist HUD policies kept black people out of certain Boston neighborhoods and absolutely out of the suburbs. Here are a few examples from the article. In the early 1900s, the first subdivision in Brookline included a racially restrictive covenant, which meant basically that homes couldn't be sold to black people. Eventually, the National Association of Real Estate Boards, whose code of ethics discouraged members from introducing black people into white neighborhoods, drafted model covenants like Brookline's and encouraged homeowners associations to adopt them. The FHA was formed in the 1930s, and between 1934 and 1962 spent $120 billion on home loans, 98% of which went to white families. These loans were the driver from the exodus from Boston to the suburbs for white people. Quote, "Because the FHA believed that property values would diminish if black people moved into neighborhoods, its underwriting manual provided a guideline stating that properties shall continue to be occupied by the same racial and social classes. The agency routinely declined to insure developments that weren't exclusively white. By 1970, Boston's suburbs, except Cambridge, were 98% white. Meanwhile, as white families moved to the suburbs, black families migrated from the South to Boston and found that the only places that they could live were places like Roxbury, a neighborhood where the banks would not make home improvement loans, where the housing was older, and which became ripe picking for slumlords. A Brown University researcher was quoted saying, "So the concept of a black neighborhood as a bad neighborhood comes right out of this process, and thus we have the story of the bad neighborhood of Roxbury." Brian Stevenson says that to make real change, privileged people need to get proximate, his word, proximate to those who are not privileged. He wrote, "To make a difference in creating a healthier community, a healthier society, a healthier nation, we've got to find a way to get proximate to the poor and the vulnerable. I absolutely believe that when we isolate ourselves, when we allow ourselves to be shielded and disconnected from those who are vulnerable and disfavored, we sustain and contribute to these problems. I am persuaded that in proximity, there is something we can learn about how we change the world," he wrote. The fact of our segregation makes that hard to do. And when we are not proximate, when we do not feel personally connected to those who are being disproportionately arrested, incarcerated, killed in police incidents, when we're not connected to the neighborhood suffering environmental pollution or displacement by gentrification, let's be easier. It is just easier to set it all aside, to put this movement ignited by the death of George Floyd back on the shelf, to reduce it to a fading bumper sticker or a tattered lawn sign. As a woman who's white, I am not immune. So here's what helps keep me going. I told you the story of my soccer field revelation, and now I want to tell you another one about the gift of proximity. Before I became a minister, I was a newspaper reporter in upstate New York. My cubicle neighbor in the features department was an African-American woman whose newsroom friends included 2 other African-American women. These colleagues gathered daily at the desk of my neighbor, chatting, joking, sharing stories that I got to hear and become part of. The dailiness built among us, some knowing and some trust. I was then newly vegan, and I was an animal rights activist, and I was assigned a feature story that would mean sharing a recipe that included veal. And after agonizing, I said no. My conscience wouldn't let me. My editors insisted and threatened to fire me, and my fate hung in the balance. And as I recall it 25 years later, 3 people rallied around me, none of them vegan. They were these 3 African-American women, all young, without power in the newsroom hierarchy, but they offered to start a petition to defend me. They were willing to put themselves at risk to defend my right of conscience. In the sea of colleagues, most everyone else stepped back. The ones who stepped forward were these 3 women. They had no interest in animal rights, but they had every interest in standing up for the underdog, and unlike many of my white colleagues, apparently, they didn't assume that those in power were right. I learned a lot from that time, and my friendship with these women endured long after I left journalism for ministry. I never forgot the gift of proximity of a simple seating arrangement. It's a gift that I continue to receive at the Urban Ministry. Most of our staff are people of color from the communities we serve. So are our program participants and our neighbors. I'm gifted daily by proximity. At the Urban Ministry, we think a lot about how to build proximity between our member congregations and our neighborhood. Not proximity by charity, but how we create space for relationships that are built on listening and learning and trust and respect. These are built over time and with intention. We're seeking not to come in and help Roxbury. We're coming to learn from Roxbury and to build bridges between suburb and city so that we can work together for real change. There's a quotation on the wall when you enter the Urban Ministry from the Aboriginal activist Lila Watson, and it says, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." This is what guides us. We organize tours of Black businesses and historic tours of the neighborhood. We gather committees and task forces made up of UUs and our neighbors to shape our work. This past autumn, I spent a chilly morning in Roxbury at an event honoring the elders of the neighborhood who'd protected and defended the community against racist neglect through the years. The Urban Ministry had joined a coalition honoring them through a portrait. I felt deep gratitude for the opportunity that I've had to get to know some of these elders, to listen to them, to build relationships. These relationships set my heart on justice for the long haul. Every day we seek ways to introduce, to knit together, to overcome the ways the world has divided us, so that we can forge relationships that will help us make the change we seek. There's no magic wand for this relationship building. It's just time and intention and trying again, and trying again, and trying again. Showing up, listening, learning, listening more. And so my invitation is this: to continue to do the good work that you are doing in this congregation, and if you feel called, to also connect with the work of the urban ministry. Join our mailing list if you're not on it. Reach out for a conversation with our engagement team, including my colleague Annie, who's here from the urban ministry this morning. Talk to your urban ministry delegates, Connie and Teresa and Lee, for information on how to get involved. Reach out to bring the gifts you have to share to the work of keeping our fires for justice burning and burning brightly. Amen, and may it be so. And now we will hear an anthem, "We Shall Walk Through the Valley of Peace," written by Moses Hogan and performed by the Sanctuary Choir. This is the time in our service for the building of community through sharing our joys and sorrows. We have none from our online community this morning, but we'd invite anyone who would like to share a joy and a sorrow to come up and share that here.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brenda Prusak, and my husband, Larry, has been very ill over the past few months, and many of you in this congregation have been wonderfully supportive to us. We are very grateful. Thank you very much. Larry is home from the hospital and slowly recovering. Thank you.
Just a brief joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I invite us to enter together into a time of prayer. Creative Spirit who is summoning spring from the winter, who helped us to rise from our beds this morning, who kindles in our hearts your creative work. We gather in a world that is asking so much of our hearts. Worries in the greater world, on the international landscape, on the national landscape, in Greater Boston, in our town, in our church, and in our home. We bring all of those hopes and worries through the doors and to the Zoom screen this morning. And we ask that you help us to remember to breathe, to be present, to know that we don't have to fix it all, just keep opening wider, keep fully coming into ourselves to respond the best that we can. We lift up our hopes for the world, our worries for the world, and those close to us as we enter together into a moment of silence. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to join with me in our closing hymn, number 168, One More Step.
Peace for us and everyone.
The Indigo Girls have a song that says, if you have a care in your heart, you have a gift to bring. Go forth into the world, bringing your cares and your gifts in service of what needs healing. Go in peace. I invite you to stay for our postlude, Go Tell It on the Mountain, an African-American spiritual of justice and freedom, played by Rip Jackson on the piano. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere, let my people go.
Other people are standing.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Those of you who are online, I invite you to a social hour that will happen right online. Just stay in the meeting. Those of you here in the sanctuary, if you are a newcomer, please join members of the newcomers committee. The meet and greet is directly through these doors in the parlor. And if you are interested in hearing more about the UU Urban Ministry with Reverend Mary Margaret, and the volunteer opportunities, please join us through these doors in Parish Hall and then eventually into the common room. There's also going to be literature available about their new and exciting programs. Go forth.